Okay, so I'm back to the color cast stills again, and this time we're going to take a look at them using the curves instead of the wheels, because we can carry out individual RGB, red, green and blue, adjustments with them as well. I'm going to make sure I've got my parade scopes active down here. Just click the drop down and choose parade if you do not. And let's start looking at this. So, like last time, I'm going to click the chain link, and now I've got my Y, R, G and B. I can work on any one of the three colour channels or the brightness option here. Now I've got a lot of red in this image, so I'm going to start working on the red curve. I have too much red in my shadows. So what I can do is I can click this leftmost point and I can drag it in, and you can see that is dropping the red, which has the effect of simultaneously raising the blue and the green. And I can just keep pulling this down here until my shadows level out and I get a more neutral image. In this image, I want to pay attention to the brown hair on the left-hand side here. That can sometimes stay a little bit too warm, even if the rest of the image looks good. So, that's fine there. And that's pretty much the same as dragging the shadow wheels down towards cyan and away from red. But I can go one further. The skin tones are typically in the middle. And if I look at this face here, I've got a red reading on my scope of around 512, and it peaks a little bit just right of the center. This reading here is the right-hand side, or the screen right-hand side of this actress's face. So what I could do is I could just push a little bit of red into the skin tones. So I'm going to just feel it out and see where the skin tones are, and I can start to push some red in there. Now you see I can go too far, but this does show how accurate this modification can be. You see how I'm basically just hitting the skin and a little bit of the wall back there. So I might just want to do this very, very slightly, and that can help keep the skin tones warm even if I've cooled down everything else. Now the curves are good at doing this kind of thing. This is a basic skin tone adjustment. We're going to be really looking at how we work on skin tones later on in the course, but it's good to be aware of some of the more basic techniques just now. But the curves can target different parts of the tonal range with quite a lot of accuracy. It's a nice little technique to be aware of. So I'm going to continue to the next shot. This one has a magenta cast, so I'm going to go into the green option here on the curves. I only have red, green and blue in the curves, so the last shot was easy. I just had to work on red. But in this case, I have to work on both red and blue. I may have to work across two curves in order to fix this. I might not just be able to work on the green curve here. But what I can do is drag the green dots up, and that will get me part of the way there. So if I have higher red and higher blue, I can drag my green shadows up, and that gets me part of the way there. Now, using just green, you can see how it's impossible to get this image neutral. I can get red and green level, and that's about the best I can do with the green curve here. The shade of purple that's in this image is not an equal mix of red and blue. There is more blue than red, and the scopes back this up. We can see when we balance green and red together, blue is still too high. So the green curve alone cannot do this job, and this is why I prefer to use the color wheels, because I can go for all kinds of intermediary hues, whereas here it's a bit more limiting. I'm using just red, green or blue with the RGB curves. So now I'm going to click over to the blue channel, and I just want to bring it over to the right. I want to take my shadows just under control here, and I want to bring this down until I get my shadows neutral and low, and behold, I have a much more neutral image now. So I had to work across two different channels for this one. If I've got a colour that isn't pure red, pure cyan, pure green, whatever, it's a bit less practical to do it this way. And that is why I do like to work with colour wheels most of the time. Like I've said, my favourite use of the curves is to do little targeted things with them. It's not to use them for my basic primary grading purposes. I prefer the fact that they can target parts of the image, and I just like to work with them like that. If you find that the curves are something you like to work with during your primary grade, that's absolutely fine, that's perfectly valid. There's no rule anywhere which states you have to use wheels, you have to use curves. Whatever works for you is valid in this practice. So, this one might be a little bit easier with the curves, because rather than just guessing between the three different parts of the tonal range, we can kind of feel it out. I can see that I've got a blue cast here, and if I look at my parade, my shadows are maybe a little bit yellow, lower blue down here, but generally the blue wave is elevated compared to the other two, even though the highlights aren't that badly out of whack. So it looks like highlights and it looks like mostly upper mids here. And that, with the wheels, could be a little bit awkward to kind of zero in on and get just right. So what I can do is I can just start to pull this down, and I can just kind of work on this and I can feel it out until things start to look a little bit better. Now I want to avoid the back of the shirt here going green, because if I do that, it's going to start looking weird. And what I might do is bring my global saturation up a little bit, because when we address a colour cast, sometimes the image can look a little bit washed out. So I might just push the saturation up. That brings the warmth in this guy's skin back over there, and it stops them from looking too pale, which is generally a good thing. So this is a much easier way of working with these curves. Now there is a little bit more. These highlights, maybe I'll do a secondary later on, but this blue curve here has helped me make a big difference to this shot, as we can see. Before and after. That's mostly there. I might do something about this guy's hair later on because I don't like how blue the highlight is, but other than that, it looks pretty good. So this one was easy enough to do with a curve, but again, I like doing little targeted things, and that's just how I like to use the curves. And this is essentially the same logic as using the color wheel. Let's say, for example, I'm looking at a magenta cast. I look at that and go, oh, it's magenta. What's the opposite of magenta? It's green. So I'll start working in the green curve, and I'll start bringing stuff up. And fairly quickly, we'll start to see this image take shape and become neutralized. So it's just about developing that eye. Again, if you want to work with the curves, an easy way to do this is to start with the wheels. Look at the image. Let's go back to the start. This is magenta. Okay, opposite of magenta is green, therefore the green curve is what I want to use here. If I go back to this image, this is kind of a bluish purple, so I'm going to want to work with green but also the blue curve. So I want you to go ahead and work on the next 3 shots of this contributor here, this guy here, and this actress here. Now in these two, obviously the green curve is going to be involved. It's not just the green curve on the final shot, but the big challenge here is, remember, you have to keep the skin tones intact and looking good as you solve this color cast, and we've already covered how you might do that with the curves. So go ahead and fix these shots, this time using the curves predominantly, and then click on through to the next lecture once you're ready.